All right, y'all. What's up, everybody? It's Kato and Garrett from the Journeyman Sports Podcast. It's about damn time that I said that again because it has been a long time since we've been able to be recording together. Everything has kind of got up in the air. We were waiting on some equipment. We were waiting on some other things to fall in place, but here we are. I'm not going to waste y'all time with all that jazz. We're here to talk about the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is right around the corner. It's coming up here on Sunday. Big matchup, Chiefs versus 49ers. The way I like to look at it and the typical way of looking at championships is great offense versus great defense, except I wouldn't necessarily call the Chiefs offense great, but they do have one very, very great player, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get into it. But first, Garrett, how are you doing today, bro? How's everything been? How are you feeling? You excited to talk Super Bowl?
Oh yeah,
What's up?
it feels good to be back doing this. It's been I think 2 months since we really 2 or 3 months even since we really got anything out. So it feels good to be back talking sports again with you on here. I know we've been doing it on our own time, but feels good to be back in this setting. So I'm excited, and what a better way to get back into it than talking about Super Bowl. And I mean, I'm sure it's not the matchup that I wanted, that's for sure. But
No, I don't think it's really the matchup that anybody wanted. Like I think
yeah,
I think if everybody had their way, it'd be Ravens Lions. And I think everyone's kind of come to the same more or less basis. If you're a 49ers or a Chiefs fan, obviously you're excluded from the conversation.
yeah.
But other than that, I think everyone else was kind of. I wanted to see Dan Campbell in a Super Bowl, but that's just me. Um, I think the weird thing about this Super Bowl and the main thing that I want to touch on is like I mentioned in the intro, like I think it usually is good offense versus good defense. And on the 49ers side, like we can see the moves that they made over the season to get their defense to a place where it's a championship caliber. We can see the pieces that they added. Obviously, the big name, Chase Young. We see that they paid Nick Bosa. Like they've obviously invested a lot into that defense. And then the Chiefs have kind of taken the opposite of an elite offense and all of a sudden kind of just caught fire. And a lot of people do want to give all the credit to Mahomes and things like that. But with
It's been
those,
that defense all year. That
yeah,
defense has held them through, which is
yeah,
weird because I mean the Chiefs, ever since Mahomes has taken over, it's always been when will their defense finally come along and play well with that offense being as electric as it has been. And then this year, complete 180, which is really surprised me because I mean, could you imagine if this team was humming at the typical offensive capacity that we're used to seeing from them
it
with
would
their
be
defense being this elite?
it would be really wild.
Team
Like
would probably actually look like the 49ers, honestly.
a lot, like much more similar. I think the thing that we're seeing now though is like the reason why I think the narrative has been bad all season is the narrative around this offensive core is the receivers are bad and da 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 da. No, yes, but no. Yes, they of course the receivers have been dropping balls, things like that. But it's not necessarily that the receivers are bad. It's just the things that have always worked for the Chiefs don't work for them anymore. It's not necessarily, it doesn't make your receiver bad because he can't go long. It's your fault for not going out and getting a deep threat in the offseason.
Yep.
It's it's not your fault. It's not necessarily your receiver's fault that Mahomes wants to throw off his back foot halfway across field and they're just not looking for the ball. Like things like that, especially when they haven't been in a system like that, it's going to have an effect. It's going to have a rub off. But then
Yeah.
what I find interesting is the reason why no one's talking about these receivers anymore, and the thing that nobody wants to mention because now that the media is talking about is Mahomes and the defense, the running game. The running game has been their bread and butter. Pacheco has been carrying that team on his back since they got into the playoffs. He's had 100-yard games every single playoff game, has had a touchdown, or I think 3 touchdowns since being in the playoffs. Like, dude has been a dog, and no
Yeah.
one's talking about him.
Those receivers have stepped up come postseason.
MBS has
Yeah.
had a huge
Travis
game.
Kelsey looks like his old self again, which I had him in a couple fantasy leagues this year, which kind of screwed me. But
And that's
Yeah, I mean,
that's
offense is
another
picking
matchup
back
we got to
up.
get to. That's another matchup we got to get to
Yeah.
is the Kittle versus Kelsey debate. But first, we got to give our picks, man. I think we've given the preview with everything that we kind of just mentioned and everything. What's your pick and like kind of give us insight on what brought you to that pick, other than just the it's Mahomes, or like
Yeah.
da da da. You feel me?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I think this is going to be I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I think it's hard not to see that. I know both of these defenses are really, really good. I think the offenses, especially the 49ers from top to bottom, they're definitely more talented than the Chiefs are at pretty much every position except for quarterback, in my opinion. And I think ultimately it's really just going to come down, like most of these games do, to who wins up front. And that's been the really surprising part to me about Kansas City, especially in their playoff run. We've seen them win in Buffalo and in Baltimore now. Those are two very physical teams, and especially the Ravens are known for being great up front and in the box. And Kansas City, in my opinion, they really controlled that game up front against Baltimore, and they they've got some questionable tackle play. As a Jags fan, I know Jawan Taylor is not exactly the best tackle in the league, which I think could be a little bit troublesome in this game. I think Mahomes is gonna have to be moving around a
I
lot
think
for
this
Kansas City to
is
win.
I think, and I don't say this lightly. I know that he saw the Cleveland pass rush with like Clowney, Miles Garrett, the Dalvin Tomlinson at D tackle. Like he saw that D line, which is insane. He saw I'm pretty sure he saw. No, he came right after Orange Crush. Never mind. But I
He's
think
played some
that
really good defense.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think San Fran's defense on Sunday is going to be, in terms of pass rush, that's going to be the most pressure he's ever seen.
I think other than the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay where they didn't have a starting offensive lineman, I think this is going to be not that bad. I think it'll be similar,
Yeah.
and Mahomes is more than good enough to correct for that. But I think Kansas City wins in a really close game. I think I'm not a big Brock Purdy fan. I'm just gonna put it out there right now. Like I think he is good. I think he's more than serviceable, but I think he is a direct beneficiary of that system. Hate on it all you want. That's just my opinion. He's played great in the postseason for these guys. He won them that Lions game. And he responded great against Green Bay. I will give him his flowers there, but ultimately these games come down to quarterback, and there's I mean, Mahomes is starting to become the new Brady, where if there's people I don't ever bet against, Patrick Mahomes is at the top of that list. And
Yeah.
I mean, I really thought this was finally going to be the year, which I mean, they did get slowed down. They had their troubles this season, yes, but all the stuff that Kansas City has rebounded from this year, I think a win in this game is the perfect accumulation of everything for them. They're playing their best football at exactly the right time,
Yeah.
similar to San Francisco's had some hiccups in the postseason, but
Yeah. That's
I see Kansas City winning this one. I'm gonna say 35. Ooh, man, this is tough. I'm gonna say 35-31. I think Kansas City wins. Mahomes gets a late 2 minute drill and hits Kelsey for a touchdown, and
and then
I
it's
think
over.
yeah, and then Travis Kelsey proposes to Taylor Swift, and then everything goes downhill from
Yeah,
there.
no, it was
But
funny. It was funny because, bro, people are gonna start thinking we have a script or something. Because I saw something when we posted one of our things on TikTok. Like I was just like making a joke or whatever, and they commented like, "Bro, has a script." But
yeah,
um, but no, I agree. I think it could honestly turn into more of a running game than people realize.
yeah,
Like, I think people are gonna. I think people going into this are thinking it's gonna be like slinging it all over the place. And nah, bro, I think the Chiefs are gonna just pound the absolute hell out of that. I think they're
which
gonna
because they
try and
struggle. That Niners defense struggled a lot against Detroit in that first half
yeah,
when
and
When the
And,
Lions got away from the run game, that was when San Francisco got back in, but they were
well,
gashing them in the
and
first
Dan
half.
Campbell went for 3 straight fourth downs, but
He's just like
yeah,
just like Mike Woodson, he doesn't know what a 3-pointer is.
he's like
Oh,
me. He's like he's like me and Madden. But
yeah.
um, nah, I think my view of this game, I'm going the opposite way. I chose the 49ers. That they're my pick. And I would say in terms of score, I'm going 21-14.
Interesting.
Um, and the only reason I say that is I think both defenses are going to come to play. And
Yeah.
I think San Francisco, when they come to play, are the best defense in the league. I think they're better than Cleveland when they're playing up to their potential. I think
Yeah.
I mean, when you have Eric Armstead, you have Nick Bosa, you have Chase Young, you have Fred Warner, you have Hufanga, you have
Fred Warner, Travarius Ward.
yeah, Travarius,
Very,
like,
very underrated corner this year. That
oh
dude's
yeah.
been a
And
stud.
isn't he a former Chief?
He might be. I don't know for sure.
I'm pretty sure he's a
I'll
former
look it
Chief.
up.
I'm pretty sure he's a
Let's
former
see.
Chief. But I think um I'm curious. But I I just think that if
Yep, he is. He is a
okay,
former Chief.
okay, yep. So that's a
There we
big one
go.
for him. Big one for him. But um I honestly think that if this defense comes to play, which they will, that they're gonna be on the more dominant side defensively. But you mentioned something very, very scary to me, and that is Brock Purdy versus Mahomes. To me, Brock Purdy is Joe Flacco with a better brain. And I'm not calling Joe Flacco dumb or anything. That's a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, all that. Like, no hate. I think he's Joe Flacco's game management, but he's smarter. He's smarter in the way he doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't make those huge, like, erratic throws out of nowhere that you sometimes see from Joe Flacco. It's mostly just very, very game manager. To say like Cam Newton, like very, very game manager. He's just
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But
nothing at all.
that's
But
like,
But the
yeah, keep
difference
going.
is you get into the fourth quarter, it's a close game, and game manager isn't gonna make your other
Right
like
out the window.
you can have Debo, you can have Kittle, you can have IU and CMC and all
McCaffrey,
of
yeah.
them, but he's not gonna elevate the players outside of him. Mahomes,
Yep.
it doesn't. You can give him Kadarius Toney, you can, and yeah, they're not good players, but he's a leader. He's been in that
Yeah.
situation many, many times before, and he's at the talent level and he's playing at the level where he makes other players around him better, regardless of who they are. And in the
Yeah.
fourth quarter, when
There's nobody else you want with the ball.
yeah,
Especially if you're an opposing fan, there's no one you want to see less with the ball than Mahomes.
well, and in the fourth quarter, also, it's the most dangerous time for players to get motivated and
Yeah.
have that leadership and be playing outside of themselves the fourth quarter
Yep.
because unpredicted shit happens when
And we saw what he did when he won against San Francisco in the Super Bowl 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, they had nothing going all game, and then they scored three touchdowns or something in the fourth
And
quarter alone.
even Tampa, like the Tampa Super Bowl
Yeah.
throw where he's like literally laying down and threw it
In
60
midair,
yards
yeah.
and it hit the dude in the hands and he still dropped it. It's like if
Yeah.
that ball is caught, that's a completely different game.
Yeah.
And that's something Mahomes can't control, but it's like it just shows you in those moments you can't count him out. It doesn't matter if he's down
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if he's down by 3 touchdowns in the fourth, like it's Mahomes.
He'll
So
find a way.
it is scary. It is scary for me to pick the 49ers. The reason I did pick the 49ers, though, is I think at some point when you have a roster that is that talented, and the 49ers are not a team like the Cowboys, the Eagles this year, where they've shown that they can choke in like little moments. The 49ers have been pretty solid and have been pretty on track the entire year. And it kind of seems like whenever they do get off track, they're very, very quick to redirect and get right back on track. So I do think if they might get punched in the mouth early. We've seen the 49ers get punched in the mouth early already in playoff.
Every playoff game, damn near.
Right. But I
They
don't
always
know. I
respond.
don't know if the Chiefs have the longevity on the offensive side of the ball to keep up with the longevity of just the entire 49ers team in general.
Yeah.
Because, yes, like you said, they were tired in the first half, but it's like the 49ers are one of those teams as well to where it's like they're going to be two completely different half teams. Like
Yeah.
one half you're going to get this 49ers team, the next half you're going to get the other 49ers team, whatever that looks like. So I just think at some point talent is going to, when you have that much talent, I mean it's Ayuk, it's Debo, it's Kittle,
Every position,
it's
like
Trent
literally you can go
Williams.
down the
It's
list.
yeah,
They
it is
have a
ridiculous.
superstar.
It's ridiculous. Plus, you have amazing coaching in Kyle Shanahan.
Yep.
You have a tenured guy. You have a hungry quarterback in Purdy, and like the NFL loves an underdog story. So it's like I just
The
think,
Chiefs. This year it would be the Chiefs.
yeah,
That
but
was so funny, dude. I saw something speaking of that. The Niners posted on like Twitter or something. It's like their recap of the season up until the Super Bowl, and the caption was like against all odds. And I was like, are you serious? Like you've been favored in every single game that you've played in. Against what odds are you talking about?
especially after they got Chase Young, everyone was like, "Oh, it's a wrap." Like there's no way.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be able to block that. But that's what I'm also saying is everything that the Chiefs can do, like the 49ers kind of just have the talent to do better. Like
Hmm.
if the Chiefs want to throw wide receiver screens, the 49ers can do it better because they have Debo, who's a running back and a receiver. And like if
Yeah.
if you want to go to your tight end 15 times in the game, we can do the exact same thing because we have George Kittle. Like,
Yep.
it is 1A, 1B in terms of tight end matchup. I mean, you
Yeah.
have, and then not even to speak about like the defensive versus the offensive matchup, like Kelsey versus Warner. You
Yep.
have
I mean,
Kittle,
Nick Bolton and Kittle, and then
yeah.
that Chiefs secondary is locked down. They're no joke, and that's kind of what I wanted to segue into to ask you, and then I'll answer after you go. But if you had to pick like two or three players on each team, or two to three matchups in terms of most important for each team to win, what would you say? What would you
I
say
would
for those
say,
teams?
I would say, hmm, okay. I would say Chris Jones versus the offensive line of the 49ers because I
Yep.
think Chris Jones has to have a dominant game because they have to get pressure. If Brock
Yeah.
Purdy can sit back there all day, it's going to be wraps very early.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say Chris Jones versus the offensive line. I would say Ayuk versus because McDuffie will probably be on
He'll
Trent
probably get a
McDuffie.
couple different looks.
Yeah, he'll probably get Debo most of the game, though, is what I'm thinking. So I think Ayuk versus whatever corner he's on. I just think
Probably be
Ayuk.
Snead, honestly.
Yeah, I think Ayuk is going to be a very, very important part of that game because
Yeah.
it's like I don't even. I think the attention is going to be on CMC, Kittle, and Debo. So I think that's when they need to pull out Ayuk
Yeah.
and
And
use him.
Ayuk has had a great postseason
He's had a great
this year.
season in general. Yeah,
Period. Yeah.
yeah, he's had a great season. And then I would say Kittle versus Kelsey. That's a huge one. I mean, I
Yeah.
think whichever tight end wins that game is going to be the team that wins that game.
Yeah. I feel that. That was definitely one of mine with Kelsey and Kittle, but the other two for me is outside of Kelsey for Kansas City's offense, what receiver is going to step up? Is it going to be Rashee Rice, MVS? Like, is Kadarius Toney even going to play? If he does, is he the guy? Like, who is the other player on the outside other than Kelsey that steps up for the Chiefs? I think that
Because
is going to be,
it can't be Kelsey and Pacheco all game. It's not
yeah, because the 49ers are too good for that. And then the other one I would say would be the Kansas City tackles against Chase Young and Nick Bosa. I mean, can they sustain and play well enough to where Mahomes can get through the progressions, even just for some of the game? Because there's going to be a couple plays in this game. I think Kansas City is going to be able to take shots down the field and the offensive line is going to have to hold up. I think
I
San
mean,
Francisco does
yeah,
a
they
pretty
can't
good
dink
job
and
of
dunk.
keeping everything in front of them, but I think there is going to come a time like there did in the last Super Bowl where Kansas City's going to have to get vertical, and it's not only on if the receiver will catch it or not, but it's also does Mahomes have the time to make that throw? Because he will put it on the money if he does. He's
Well, what makes it so hard, especially for a quarterback like Mahomes, is like usually you could say, "Oh, he'll get outside of the pocket and he'll be fine." But it's not like one side is weaker than the other. They have one dog on one side and another dog on the other side. So it's like I can't escape the pocket to the right or left. I'm gonna have to make some shit work and just like figure it out. So it's not like
yeah,
he's gonna, and I guarantee you they're gonna be playing contain most of the time because they have to versus Mahomes. So it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think here's what I think the first half of this game is going to be like they're just running at each other a ton. I think it's going to be the CMC and Pacheco show the entire first half. And then I think they're going to turn it on with everybody. Like they're going to start, both offenses are going to have to air it out at some point. I'm curious. I am very, very curious to see how Mr. Irrelevant reacts to the spotlight, though,
yep,
because we've seen him. Everyone's giving him his praise when he won playoff games and stuff, but a Super Bowl is completely different.
yep,
Coming from, I mean, you gotta think he was at Iowa State, the last pick of the draft last year. It's not like this man has been in the NFL very long at all. Like last
yeah.
year, he was still at Iowa State, got picked last in the draft, somehow sat his way through two injuries from his other teammates, and then now is kind of that's the underdog story that I was talking about for me is like I don't know if I've ever heard of a Mr. Irrelevant quarterback winning a Super Bowl. So that
Yeah,
would
I
be
mean,
pretty cool. That'd be
yeah, it would be, and I mean that would, depending on how he plays in that game, that would certainly change
yeah.
my
It can't be
perception of
like
him.
it can't be 17 for 17, 115 yards and two touchdowns, Brock Purdy. Like that's
Yeah,
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like I need like 20 for 30, like 270 yards, maybe 300 yards, and like three TDs.
yeah, and I think that Kansas City's defense is good enough to where, I mean, we know McCaffrey's gonna get his numbers, he's
He's
gonna
gonna get
score
he's gonna
whatever.
touch the ball.
He's gonna get his, that's fine. You just kind of live with that. But I think for the 49ers to win this game, Brock Purdy is gonna have to make two, three, four, five, you know, throws that you see guys like Mahomes make. Like he's gonna
Mhm.
have to make those elite quarterback throws to win games like this. And
Because the last
he's
time
done
the
it on smaller scales, but he's going to have to make throws that show he is the guy.
yeah,
And I don't
and
know if I think that he can make those at this current stage.
I agree. And the last time, I mean, it's interesting because the 49ers were in such a similar situation the last time they were in the Super Bowl because like I'm not necessarily trying to compare Brock Purdy to Jimmy Garoppolo because I
They're
do
very similar, in my opinion.
they're similar. I think I mean obviously Purdy's more mobile and like he's younger and just kind of has the more the newer like West Coast kind of
Yeah.
fluent like fluidity to him, but I think like he is similar in the way that they play the game of just like oh check down, hand the ball off, check down, hand the ball
Yeah.
off,
I mean,
check like, but that could also be the system. I think though it's the Super Bowl, there neither team is going to be like stick in the system. It's just going to be like do what
yeah.
you have to do to win the game, and that's why I'm saying we're going to see what Brock Purdy really is in this game. Because
Yep,
it's
I agree. I mean, there's nowhere for him to hide on this stage. Like there is so much that San Francisco can do to protect him, yes, and try and make it easy, but these games always get off script. Crazy shit happens all the time in Super Bowls.
and
And
San Fran can't come in like they did against Green Bay, thinking like, oh, we're going to walk through this team.
or Detroit even.
Yeah,
They came
yeah,
out super flat in that game.
yeah. I mean, you just can't, and I think it is like I think they do see like, oh, we have a bunch of dogs, like we don't even need to really try, and then they're like, oh shit, the NFL is full of a bunch of dogs, so we do need to try,
Yeah.
and then they get right, but they can't do like that's been their biggest question so far in this playoff run is like, can they get started? And so far
Yeah.
they haven't been able to,
And
and
this
that's
is
a
a
Brock
team you
Purdy
can't
issue
do that
that
again. Yep.
it's on the quarterback to get your team started, to lead your team down the field and get them on the board first. Like that's a quarterback's job. If they're falling flat, that falls on Brock Purdy. So we're
Yeah.
going to see in this game if they come out flat, we know who
And
majority of that blame is going to fall on.
and it's kind of been the opposite for Kansas City. I feel like Kansas City's been a great starting team, and then especially their offense in the second half, like just for whatever reason tapers off. And I think that's another interesting sort of angle on this game is which team is really going to break that, like break that script of their own team. Like who's going to be able to perform outside of what the standard kind of has been for those guys. And I just think Kansas City, I mean, these are two very experienced teams, but kind of like we talked about with quarterback, like that's where it starts and ends. And I just don't bet against 15. I mean, he's just that guy. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Somewhat interesting fact about this game: there is actually a human who has $10 to win like 700,000 on Sam Darnold being the Super Bowl
Super
MVP.
Bowl MVP, yeah.
Yeah.
Never know. Never
Well,
know.
see, hey, if Brock Purdy has a terrible game to start, you never know. But
Yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold's not too bad.
no, and that's what I like. I think this San Fran team is gonna find like I think a lot of the reason why Kansas City's been able to rip teams apart early is because no one expects them to run the ball. And then they've been just coming out and pounding it and pounding it and pounding it. Everyone's like, what the fuck is going on? So I think that's been able to catch people off guard. You can't pound it on this team. Like they have the
Either of these
linebackers,
teams,
they have the
really.
line. You're not doing that. So figure something else out. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yep.
be interesting. But all in all, man, we're super excited. I hope y'all are excited. We are running a little bit short on time, so we're going to go ahead and get on out of here. But we had to make sure that we brought the Super Bowl preview, all the sauce about the game to y'all. Like we said, we're going to get back into this content stuff. We're super happy to be able to have the equipment and everything that we need now to get back on track and to take this thing where we want to go. So just keep tuning in, man. If you enjoyed this, please do leave a like and a comment. We appreciate all feedback, good or bad, and we will get with y'all next time, man. It's been Journeyman Sports Podcast. I'm one half of the show, Cade. This is my co-host Garrett, and we will get with y'all next time.